Today on the RH podcast on AI, we have Florian Walter. He's a self-taught programmer and content creator. His YouTube channel is Coding in Flow, where he has over 248,000 subscribers.
While I was learning programming and building my channel, I also lived off of the savings from programs, which funded this part of my life, basically.
That's what most people are searching for when you're looking online. And so that's a great way to get people to see your content. How are you doing, though?
I'm really good. How are you?
What time is it over there?
Now it's 4 p.m.
4 p.m.? Okay. I think it's like 10 here, or something like that.
In the morning. Yeah.
How's your day going so far?
Really nice. I have finished preparing a tutorial. That's why I was so busy the last week or so, because I really had to finish something I have been working on like 2 months on that, and I had to finally release this video because I promised the sponsor who I worked together with that I release it in August, and I released it just yesterday on the last day of August, and today I still had to finish up some stuff around that.
You're technically You're technically still on time. You know,
yeah, it was on the last day of August. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, but I have to set a line for myself to finally get it done. Otherwise, it takes up more and more time. What are you drinking, by the way? Coffee?
Huh? I don't drink coffee. I'm one of those weird people. Those weird people that don't drink coffee. What people don't know is that they don't want me to drink coffee either.
But do you drink any caffeine?
Well, this is tea. So whatever is in tea is you can consider that.
Yeah.
Whatever the amount is in tea, you can consider it caffeine.
Yeah, I drink yerba mate tea once a week. That's my one caffeine day per week.
Is it that Argentinian tea mate, that thing? Yeah, I only know 3 people that drink that. You're the third.
It's tastier.
Is it though? Isn't it like very bitter?
No, I really like the taste. I think it's only bitter if you put too hot water in it. You have to cool it down a bit. But there's also caffeine in it, and I don't want to get too hooked on caffeine, so I only drink it once a week on Sundays.
Because like everybody who I know that drinks caffeine is always tired.
Yeah, and it's
so it doesn't really work.
The problem is you get used to it, and then you don't even notice the effects of it anymore. That's the problem with caffeine.
But they fill it with sugar. So, well, I mean that like the Starbucks culture, where it's kind of like a hot
I wouldn't drink that.
cocoa kind of thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't drink that.
Sorry?
Yeah, I wouldn't drink that sugar stuff from.
Where I live, there's like a when Halloween comes, there's a pumpkin spice latte.
It sounds delicious.
And apparently people go crazy for it. They're waiting all year for it. So marketing is successful on marketing check for Starbucks.
Yeah, but drinking a lot of calories is a good way to get fat. That's the problem.
It's a fantastic way to get fat.
Yeah, it's just too easy to consume too much of it.
It works every time. All right. Well, thanks for even taking the time. I know it's at least it's kind of clear that you're a busy, very, very busy person. So thanks for.
Yeah, only sometimes.
Only sometimes.
But it's not a good thing that I'm so busy. It just means that I haven't figured out a lot of stuff yet, how to do it more efficiently. I shouldn't be that busy.
Yeah, ironic. That's very ironic for a coder, no?
Yeah, and also the YouTube stuff is a grind.
It's quite the consistent amount of work, right? For a spontaneous amount of pay.
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to put out a short. I'm trying to put out one of these YouTube shorts, these 1 minute long videos every day, and then I always have to prepare them in advance.
You put out one. You put out only one. You only put out one a day.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a few months now.
Yeah,
and occasionally I make a longer tutorial. Like the one I just released is almost 8 hour long, where we build a full project.
Yeah,
and that's also a lot of work.
But realistically, your workload is a lot harder than a lot of people's workload because you actually have to put out objective value. A lot of people who are putting out their reels, and I mean that respectfully, like a lot of people who are putting out reels, they're just someone says something quippy and they like to visualize it. But you're actually like, this is how to do something. This is how to do this. Like how-tos are like, from the research I've done, a lot of your how-tos they have to be useful because they're coding based. You know what I mean? Someone just says something funny, they make then they put a B-roll on it, and now that's their reel. It's not. It doesn't compare. It doesn't have to make sense as much, or the sense it has to make is at a lower tier.
Yeah, but coming up with humor every time is probably also not so easy.
It could, the best kind of humor is spontaneous, right? So coming up with it is really about how funny the guest is.
Yeah, I actually try to add some more dry humor to my own tutorials at the moment, just to make them a bit more interesting. I'm not really the most extroverted person, but I understand dry humor, a little bit of sarcasm, and it just makes the tutorials more interesting if you say something funny every hour or so.
Every hour, maybe a little bit more frequently than an hour.
Yeah, I try to, but I do it, as you said, spontaneously. I don't really prepare that in advance. Just if I can think of something at the top of my head while recording, then I put it in.
Do you feel like that people really respond to that when you put the humor in with the coding? Actually, there's another YouTuber I could tell you about later that does a really good job at that, but he's almost like kind of Robin Williams style humor, where everything is sort of a reference to something else and slightly absurd.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, but people do react to that. I get comments on these videos when I put some humor and they say they like it.
Yeah. So are you looking to put more in? Is this launch of your comedy career?
It will probably not be a full career, but I try to put more in, more humor in, because I just think if you watch a tutorial and it takes several hours, then it probably feels very refreshing from time to time to have a little bit of a laugh in between. Uh-oh. Instead of just try coding and try technical stuff all the time.
There's always a nice mix between, or I suppose there's always a nice mix between learning and humor. If we could, it'd be great to have, it'd be great to have it in something as complex as coding. I remember, one of the ways I learned history was like a book series called Horrible History, and they were really funny. It was like a picturesque kind of book, but it taught you about Roman civilization and Greek civilization. I don't know how easy that would be for coding. Coding, doesn't lend itself to that kind of sort of a caricature-ish drawings and representations, but someone can do it. You never know. There's no limit to human creativity.
Yeah, there's also a big channel called Fireship. I don't know if you know him. He does a good job of adding humor to all his videos, and he combines information and humor in this really nice way. And I think that's part why his videos are so viral.
Good for him, Well, so with all this being said, I guess I want to start from the beginning, at least for you, which is sort of why did you and how did you get into coding in the first place? What happened that made you feel like I'm gonna do this?
So I didn't study computer science. I studied business economics actually in university. But when I was in my early 20s up to my mid 20s, I was the kind of person who just I didn't know my ambitions. I didn't really have any ambitions. I just did whatever felt right in the moment. And somehow this changed for me in around 24. I don't know if my brain finished developing at this time. But only then I started becoming more interested in actually making something out of my life. And I studied business economics. And after university, I actually played professional online poker for a few years. This was actually really possible. And I did this for a few years, but I knew that I couldn't keep doing this forever, because it was just it was obvious that this wouldn't stay profitable forever, just because of the development of this whole poker stuff, and technology and bots came in and stuff like that. And also I started hating it because it was really boring after a while, just clicking buttons all day. And once you know how you play against recreational players, then there's not so much strategy in there anymore, because you're just playing a blueprint basically most of the time. It's often, a lot of it is just automated in your brain. It's just a habit. So it became so boring that I really started to get depressed by it, even though I was making money from it by just pressing buttons for 8 hours a day or 10 hours or sometimes more. Felt really bad. And then I actually sat down and thought about what do I actually want to do in the future. Definitely not business economics, the stuff I studied, because I just did this to study anything, just to be occupied, just to have something to do, at this time. And then I remembered that I enjoyed coding as a kid, but I didn't really pursue it. Later, when we had it in school, it also came to me easily because I just like coding. But again, I didn't pursue it in my youth. And then I started teaching myself coding again, but I was already 26 at this time. So 1 month before I turned 27, I started learning coding again. And then like only 2 or 3 months later, I think, I also started my YouTube channel because I thought if I learn the stuff anyway, then I can make videos about it. Maybe I can make up for my bad CV, my bad, how is it called? Curriculum vitae, where my CV, because I probably can't get a job anywhere if my CV is just 3 years of online poker and studying something that was completely unrelated. And I thought maybe I can make up for this. And yeah, this actually worked. I mean, if you have a YouTube channel or something like that and it grows to a certain size and you make a name for yourself, then this is totally something that impresses potential employers. But then eventually the channel grew. In the beginning, I was doing Android development. Now I'm more into web development, but the channel grew pretty quickly with my Android content. And then pretty quickly to me, it was clear that I maybe can turn this channel into its own business instead of actually applying for a job somewhere. So I did some freelancing instead from time to time and focused a lot of my time on the channel. And that's still what I'm doing right now. The only thing that, about a year ago or so, I started going more into the web development direction and making content for that. And what I didn't expect was that it was almost as if I started over with my channel, because I had over 200,000 subscribers by this time, but those were almost exclusively Android devs that aren't that interested in web development stuff. So I thought, if I make web dev content, it will just continue getting views from the same people. Maybe they are interested in the same stuff. But it was almost as if I started from scratch again. But yeah, now I have some momentum again because of the content I have put out by now. But yeah, this was why I started coding. I was 26 and I tried to figure out what I want to do with my life in the future that doesn't make me feel as bad as poker did every day. And I'm glad I found back to coding because I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy building projects. It's fun. And it's the best kind of job, I think, for me right now that I can see. The most fun kind of work.
Do you feel like you're motivated more by fun than you are by anything else? Do you see like your income as simply a side effect or necessary side effect of your fun? Or are you motivated by income?
Yeah, this was something that poker showed me, that if I make good money, it's not enough to make me feel good at the end of the day. And it kind of sucked to wake up in the morning and really hate what you have to do with the rest of the day. And the money didn't really make up for this. So this is when I realized that I probably need to have something that I enjoy at least part of the time, So I do put fun on a high importance level, high priority. Because I think if you have fun working, then work almost isn't work anymore. I mean, I don't have fun all the time with the stuff I'm doing right now. I don't enjoy editing videos, for example, in particular. But a lot of the time preparing projects, I do have fun, and it just makes work feel less like work. And I think that's very good.
For when you were doing poker, was it that lucrative? Would you compare it to YouTube in terms of its, 10 hours a day is a long time. So lucrative is also a relative term, if you can't enjoy what you're making, that's no matter what, it's kind of tough to enjoy it, to have to think it's valuable. But people think about it a lot as gambling, but can you have consistent income that you can really say, okay, I can maybe not buy, I'm not sure what you can buy with poker income, but was it really that profitable?
I would not recommend anyone to do it anymore, because you can't just jump in there, and even if you are good, you will just get robbed of your money. Basically, it was more about who you know, what people you know. It's a bit difficult to explain. So I focused on heads-up poker. That's 1 versus 1, and there you have to imagine it like this. There are basically groups that are forming, that are fighting off other players that also would be good enough to beat a recreational player. But unless you are in that group, you don't even get to these recreational players, because the other ones are basically attacking you, so to speak. They are sitting your tables, and they are doing this one after another. So they have like this, it's difficult to explain, they have groups, and they share the workload, the battles they have to do between each other. So 9 people out of this group keep playing the fishers, the recreational players, and 1 guy of the group is busy fighting you off, sitting you all the time, so that you don't get to this recreational player and you keep losing money. And then after a while, this 1 player can play fishers, and another player jumps in and plays you instead. So unless you are in that group, there is no chance you can even make any money with that. Absolutely no chance. So I would not recommend this to anyone, because then it's really just gambling. But yeah, since I started, I have been doing this for a few years, and the first 1 or 2 years I was probably a losing player, or maybe break even. But then I knew more people, and I started getting better, and I started getting into these groups, and then I started getting these recreational players. And yeah, we could make money. I was actually not a good player, but because I knew the right people and I got into these groups, I was good enough to beat the fishers, these recreational players that really don't have any skill at all. They just do this for entertainment. And I was good enough to beat them. And then it really depends on what group you are in and how high are you allowed to play. Because the fishers on the very low levels, they are just as bad as the fishers on the very high level. Because recreational players, they don't care about strategy. They are just bad no matter what stake. If you play them for $50 or for $5K, their skill level is the same. But as a bad player, you don't even get into these high stakes. That's the problem. I don't even remember how much money I made with that. It was not so, I wasn't rich, but it was enough to live off of it. And then also, while I was learning programming and building my channel, I also lived off of the savings from poker. So it funded this part of my life, basically. So it was useful.
What is it about you feel that made you patient enough to wait for 2 years to be good at something to be an impact? And a lot of people would not do that.
You mean in regards to poker?
With regards to poker, well, I guess specific poker was the example for it, right? Poker was just like, you could have been anything that you waited for 2 years to be good at. But poker is particularly, some people could say poker is particularly risky in terms of, it depends on how you want to think about it, but you could say, okay, poker is particularly risky, and this person, waited to be good at poker for 2 years to make money out of it. You could say that, but it could be anything, like a business. It could be YouTube. But the idea is that like very few people would wait for 2 years to be good at something before they make any kind of money. They would most likely go and get a job. Like that's what most people would do. So you kind of parlayed that, lack of risk averseness into everything you've done so far, and that patient. Well, I guess lack of risk averseness, risk adversement here. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but you're able to accept risk. That's the first part, and the second part is you're patient. 2 years, you're patient even with the new thing you're doing with the web part. You're saying, hey, I understand it's going to take some time, and I'm willing to wait. You consistently identify that you're patient.
Yeah, try to be patient. Yeah, I try to do that. But I mean, in the time where I was still learning poker, I did enjoy it. It was only later that it stopped being fun. But when it was still this learning process, I mean, poker, many people play poker for fun. Normally, it is a fun game. Only if you have to do it all day and always the same moves, then it starts becoming very boring. But at the beginning, I was enjoying it. But I played on and off. I wasn't very disciplined about it. Sometimes I played for a while and then I really got annoyed by it, and then I probably didn't play for 2 months or so. I don't know. I wasn't very disciplined about it. I just did it from time to time, and then eventually I got into the right groups, as I said, and then I got a little bit better and started earning money from that. But yeah, I want to say again that I don't recommend anyone to play this because there's no chance you're gonna be a winning player. Also, when I stopped playing online poker around this time, everyone started using bots, and these bots, they can play a perfect game. You can't beat these bots. You can only lose against them, and you don't even get to the recreational players that don't use the bots, because the pro players that use the bots, they know how to protect these lobbies and how to sit you on purpose, you know. Yeah, and regarding patience, when it came to coding and my YouTube channel actually took off pretty quickly. So I didn't really need much patience there. I was lucky with that because Android was a really undersaturated topic on YouTube, and it started growing quickly, and I was always getting my dopamine hit from the stats, you know, every day, more subscribers and growing a bit faster. So this was not really difficult. But I do try to be patient in general. I mean, there's no other way really to do the stuff I want to do without being patient.
You'd be surprised. It's not a trait everybody has. It's not a trait I have. I don't think so. I'm not a patient. If it doesn't happen yesterday, it's an issue. And I know people where they'll try 10 things at level 0.5, and that's like level 1 was all you needed for any of those things. And you can spend a day arguing with them about that.
Yeah, I'm not a naturally patient person. Up to my mid-20s, I didn't really even have any hobbies that I consistently did, you know, because as a kid and in my youth, I was not patient at all. I never stuck with anything. I started different kinds of stuff, sports and so on, and I always quit after a few months because I became bored of it. So I'm not a naturally very patient person, but nowadays I try to force myself to be more consistent and more patient.
You go from not being patient at all to being able to wait for 2 years on something, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I try to sometimes just force myself.
So you have better self-control than you used to? Is that what it is?
I do think I have better self-control, yeah. I also stopped a lot of bad habits that I had in my youth. I used to smoke and drink and all this stuff, and I got rid of all of this one by one.
And that definitely helps. Well, if you talk about good habits, I mean, I know you've written a lot of material. Sorry, have you written a lot of material regarding Android, as you have alluded to? What made you pick Android? Like, you know, at least for YouTube. Did you do the thing that every business person does and say, hey, I'm going to check my market. I'm going to see, you know, which one is less saturated with the most keywords, you know, Google keywords or something. Or you're like, I like this. This is cool. Or, you know, or, you know, you did talk about, hey, you wanted to get into the industry. So why pick Android? Let me just start from there. Like, why pick Android as the tech you wanted to start playing with?
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I looked at the list of programming languages available, and yeah, there were different sections with iOS and Android and web development and so on. And there was Java, and Java had a connection to Android and to game development, and I knew what Java meant. I have heard of it before. And something like Swift UI or Swift was more foreign to me. So I just thought, okay, Java, I know this language, I have heard of that. You can make apps, you can make games. And making apps sounds kind of cool. And then I just picked that. Yeah. But in hindsight, I should have picked web development, I think, because you can do much more with a website than with a native mobile app.
Why do you think so? Is it just its spreadability? What makes you feel like?
Yeah, because every mobile phone and mobile device has an online browser. So unless you need some very device-specific features like camera or GPS, then often you can just use a website instead of an app.
That's true. But there are a lot of cool things that you can actually do with technology. It needs a camera or a GPS. Because those are like location and, and then visual information.
The problem with mobile apps also, or with native apps, that if you know how to do native Android development, then you can't make apps for iOS. That's a bit annoying.
It's true. That's true. A lot of people use Flutter, or they used to use React Native, but like with most things React, the ecosystem is fractured to the point where it's like you spend more time looking for solutions than you do implementing them, which can sometimes be a pain for a lot of people.
Yeah, Flutter seems really interesting, but I haven't tried it out.
Maybe one day, maybe you can try it on after people see how good your course is on web development. You can try to do something with Flutter and see what they say. Go back and forth, re-enter the market.
Yeah, I do get requests for Flutter tutorials from time to time.
Well, why not? So, let's go all the way to the techiest question, I think, which is, what would you consider the best architecture for Android applications? Like, how do you really think about that?
I mean, the most popular one when I was making tutorials was usually MVVM. And this is just what I stick to. But when I made Android tutorials, one of the mistakes I made so I'm completely self-taught, right? I just started teaching myself. And when I made these Android tutorials, I focused a lot on single topics, isolated topics, rather than building whole projects. So I made tutorials like how to build notifications, and then I read all the documentation and all the source code of notifications, and I made a tutorial only around this topic. And I didn't focus enough on building projects. Only when I switched to web development, I focused more on building projects and everything that's involved in that. That's why I make mostly project-based tutorials on my YouTube channel now. But on Android, because of the way I approached this, I didn't have so much experience with different architectures and how they relate to each other. So I really only used MVVM basically, or what I understood as MVVM. But I can't really compare it.
Fair enough. I think, at the same time, building those little pieces inadvertently are kind of like great ways for people to see your content, because that's what people are looking for when they're not looking for. It's really really popular. Even when I'm looking for an education on how to do something, it's like these like pieces, how to do notifications, how to do modals, like these sort of extra pieces that, page independent solutions on the website, or, there's different ways you can call it. Features, like features of a website as opposed to the features of the product, or features of the app as opposed to features of the product. That's what most people are searching for when you're looking online. And so that's a great way to get people to see your content, is to like, this is how you build this full thing.
They're really popular, but I focused too much on that. And then in around 2020 or so, that's about 2 years or 2.5 years after I started my channel, after making these videos for over 2 years, I realized, wait, I can't even build a simple app right now, because I didn't really learn that. I just focused on all this little stuff. And I thought, just like a puzzle, these little pieces would add up and teach me how to build a full app just by knowing how to build single pieces. But it didn't work like that. You have to actually build full projects in order to learn how to do it. Then after 2 years, I couldn't build it. I mean, Android development is notoriously difficult because you have some constraints in these devices that make it more difficult. For example, when you rotate an Android device and it rotates the screen, then the whole screen, the whole thing you see on the screen in memory gets basically destroyed and deleted and recreated from scratch. So you can't put your data in there because it will get lost. When I build a React app, I can just put my data directly into my components, and that's very straightforward and easy to understand. But on Android you can't do that because it gets lost when you rotate the screen or when you change the font size, for example, on the device. All these configuration changes actually destroy the screen that you see on the phone. And for this reason you need these kind of architectures like MVVM, where you have to put your data somewhere else, even to get the most simple to-do list apps working. Then you also have memory constraints. I think you can't even load a big image into an Android phone, at least not in the older ones a few years ago, without getting a memory error. And you have all these little constraints that you have to work around. So Android is definitely more complicated, I think, than something like React. Okay, React has its own difficulties, but it was definitely not easier building an Android app. But once you know how it works, then you get it, and then you can build upon that.
What was it like building out a course for people to learn this after you you all these pieces together, you built them yourself, you've shown that you've built them. And I would assume at that point, you've also had at least built a simple project with some architecture, and then think to yourself, hey, I need to turn this into an opportunity for other people to learn. What was that process, right? Like writing a book and writing tutorials and just writing that kind of content.
Yeah, back in the Android days, I made one course when I was into Android development and one course when I did web development. And the web dev one was much more natural to make because I made this course after I actually built a few projects and actually deployed them to production. For example, I have this side project called toothub.io, which is a website that I've built. And I took the knowledge I learned by building these projects and turned them into a course. This felt much more natural. Android, because of the way I approached learning, I had to force this. I had to, learn how to build the project while I was making the course. So in hindsight, maybe the course was a bit too simple. But I don't know what year this was, 2021 maybe. By then I knew how to build Android apps. But I like the React course more. It's also much bigger and longer with more features than the Android one, because by then I actually knew how to build stuff.
So what made you choose React? What made me not React, but web development first? Right? What made you think that, hey, this is where I want to go now? Was it the same thing you did before, where you were just interested and you thought, hey, Android is boring for me now. I'm too good at it, and I wanna branch out.
Yeah, the thing is, I got really. There was a time when I really didn't want to make Android tutorials anymore. But this was also because I didn't really find the correct approach for me to make these tutorials and enjoying the process, similar to how we talked about poker earlier. Then there was a time when I wanted to stop making tutorials on YouTube altogether, because I thought I have done this for a few years. I don't want to keep doing this. It's so annoying. and I hate it. And then I became really interested in indie hacking, where you build your own little startup basically, but not with funding and with a huge team, just by yourself or maybe with a co-founder. And this is why I became interested in web development, because the stuff I wanted to build, the first idea I had was a Chrome extension, which requires me to know JavaScript and web stuff. And then the next idea was this two-type website I was talking about, which is still online. And this is why I learned web development, because all the ideas I had were websites and not mobile apps. This is also why I'm saying that in hindsight, I think learning web dev is more useful in general, because you can build cool stuff with that. And this made me switch to web development. And then I built these projects for several months and only focused on that. And then I realized, wow, I learned so much in the process that I might as well just turn this into tutorials for YouTube again. And then I found a better approach for me to make these YouTube tutorials and this content without hating my life by approaching it a bit differently. Now I'm basically building projects for YouTube, and I work on my own side projects. And from the stuff I learn while doing these projects, I create my shorts and my YouTube tutorials and so on. But before I did that on Android, the direction was the opposite. I first thought, what do I want to make a tutorial about? And then I was learning this particular topic. And this felt more like doing homework, because, okay, now I have to learn everything about this topic to make a video about that. But now it's the opposite. Now I'm building stuff. I'm having fun in the process because I enjoy building websites and apps. And just as a side effect, I learn a lot of stuff which I can then repurpose into creating content. It's a much more natural process and much more fun for me. And that's why I've been able to put out so much content in the last few months without hating my life as I used to on Android. Yeah.
I'm happy that you're finding like it's always good to have a process that a lot of things when it comes to like, doing anything really, but especially when you're trying to be productive in the market, is how do you get a process that is fun? If you have employees, it's fun for your employees. Like that's super important, where they enjoy and they're enjoying themselves. That you're enjoying yourself. Everyone's having a good time. We're getting it done, but we're having a good time. That's super. If you're lucky enough, if you don't work it, don't wait.
Yeah, I think for content creation, you have to find a way to enjoy the process. It's such a grind, and you have to keep outputting more and more content. And if it feels like hard work for you, then you will stop eventually. This is why there are so many content creators who make videos about their burnouts, because they just don't want to do it anymore. So I was always really interested in finding a way to approach this where I can make it as much fun as possible. And I found a way to do that.
Do you feel like you're a kind of person that needs a creative outlet?
Yeah, I think so. And I also always need my own thing to work on,
Yeah. Did you feel like I'm asking this specifically because I'm sort of going into editing and why you feel like editing. Well, I think I don't know. I feel like I don't like editing either to some degree, but I only don't like it because it takes time. And because I have other things that I have to do, and because it's engineering related. Engineering takes time, so I have like two things that take a lot of time. One is about being creative, and one is also about being creative, but in a different way. So it's like it just becomes very stressful. But you're doing that all the time. So how do you deal with that? And like, did you ever find? Is that what's your reason? How do you feel about editing, whether you like it or you don't like it? So like, you know what I mean? Because that's my matrix and why I feel the way I feel. What's yours matrix?
Yeah, editing it can be fun. The problem is that the tutorials I make for YouTube, like the last one, for example, is 8 hours long, and it takes so much time to go through that and cut and cut. I have literally a pain in my left forearm right now from all the hotkeys I had to press on my keyboard. It's hurting right now, and it's just too much. It's just too much editing I have to do with all these shorts and so on. Now, editing is something that most YouTubers outsource, but I can't. The problem is this is a problem I really had in my head for the last few months. I can't see myself outsourcing my tutorial editing because I do corrections while editing. Sometimes I notice, okay, I used the wrong word here. I have to clarify this with some text on the screen. And if I outsource editing, then all of this is gone. I can't do this step anymore. So I feel like I have to edit myself, or I have to accept that the quality is like 10 or 20% lower. That's something really difficult for me right now. I'm also a bit of a control freak in this regard. And I'm scared that the editor will mess up, and ruin my 8-hour-long tutorial because he edited something wrong somewhere. I'm a bit paranoid about it. But yeah, I just have too much editing to do, and this is why I don't enjoy it.
Well, after the podcast, I can tell you some things I do that and we'll see. That's something you may use, may not use, but maybe we'll see. But having a pain in your wrist, you gotta fix that.
Yeah. I mean, it will go away in a few days.
You need to delegate, man. At some you need your arms and legs. They're essential.
I mean, optimally, I would just prepare the tutorials, record them, and have someone edit them. But I have to find a way to do that where I feel comfortable with it.
What's your favorite thing about building with the websites? Like, is it the abstractions or the level of access? Because I think coders are in two camps to some degree. There are people in the computer science space are in two camps, and then you can correct me if you think that it's a little different. There's the people who like computations, so they like abstractions, they like they like the fact they can make everything that used to be a while loop into a reduce or something like that, right? They like playing that game, so just like playing with just basically doing transformations, and they love ETL pipelines. Sometimes they like DevOps infrastructure stuff and just setting all that, like setting stuff up. I think there are different stages also in software where, at one point, you're playing with Linux kernels all the time, and you just like setting it up. And almost the fact that it breaks all the time is why it's fun, because you get to redo it again or something. There's something about that, and it's after some time you're like, I don't have time for this. And then you go into different stages. But I think in that line of person kind of just likes computation. And then there's a person who likes to see cool things happen, and coding is a way that they can make that happen. And they're motivated completely by the fact that at the end of this, something cool is going to get made. Those people usually are the ones that end up in starting a company or something like that early, whether they're successful or not, or at least are in a startup and like sort of massage the same product over and over again if they believe in the product. Which one are you?
Yeah, definitely the second one that you mentioned, the people who actually want to build stuff and put stuff on the screen and see it work. I mean, that's the coolest part about it. I'm not so much interested in the nitty-gritty details and all this technical stuff. And yeah, I think that's more the people who want to work a job as a programmer rather than building their own projects. But for me, building my own project, this is so intrinsically rewarding and motivating. I really enjoy this a lot. And but the only things that make me money is actually my content right now. So I mean, TuTab is making a little bit of money, but it's only monetized with affiliate links, and affiliate links don't make a lot of money. And I'm working on another project right now, which is like a journaling app with AI integration, and this I haven't added any monetization there yet. I don't know how difficult it is to actually build a SaaS product that makes money. It's probably quite difficult, but even if it doesn't make money, just building these projects is already a lot of fun for me. I really enjoy this.
You talk about your SaaS product? You talk about it a little bit more. What the idea? What made you want to do it? I know you did the indie hacker thing in terms of just like looking at the website and seeing what's possible, but why choose this sort of niche? Yeah.
So I basically have two. Yeah, I basically have two projects right now. One is called TuTab.io. It's like it's a tool where people submit links to programming tutorials and courses, and they add some metadata, like is it a paid course, what's the difficulty level, what topics is it about, and it's basically like a database where people can then up and download different resources, and the idea is that you always find the best tutorial on a certain topic. So you want to learn JavaScript and you find this list like on Stack Overflow where the best entry is voted to the top, This was just an idea I had. And the other project I'm building right now is called smartdiary.co. I bought the .co domain because the .co domain costed $3 and the .com domain was $3,000. So
I feel like all these like the game of domain buying is hot. It's still hot. It's been hot for like 40 years. It looks like there's people who are willing to scoop up every variation of the domain you actually want for your product.
I mean, I'm surprised that that the smart diary com domain is even available. I mean, it's just expensive right now, but 3.5K for the domain is not that much if the product is successful. And it's a nice domain. Smart diary sounds exactly like what it does. So right now it's the .co domain. And I mean, I'm really intrigued by all the ChatGPT stuff. And I have been playing around with their API for a while now. And I just thought, what could I build with it? And I think this is actually a really cool idea. It's basically a journaling app where you write diary entries, and I'm using it myself. And I enjoy using it, which is always a good sign, you know. And what it basically does is, so you can write a journal entry, but instead of writing the whole thing, you only add some notes, like bullet points, what you did today. Then you click a button, it turns this into a whole diary entry, just like ChatGPT would do it. Then you save it, you get a summary again of this entry, so you can glance over it. And then I added chat features where you can chat with the AI about your diary entries, either about a single entry or about a whole week or a whole month. And you can ask it, hey, what did I achieve this week? Or what would you improve? Or some people, they just want to talk about their problems with the AI. And it's still a relatively new project because I didn't have so much time I could put into it the last few weeks. But now I want to focus on this more. And I actually think that this is a really cool idea because I use it myself. I find it useful. But as you mentioned earlier, I don't approach my projects like you should theoretically do. I didn't think about the market there and all this kind of stuff because I always have in the back of my head that I also want to turn this content, this tech stuff into content later. So I always think about what is a cool combination of tools and technology that I could use that also interests other people. And then I try to put this into one idea. And like this AI diary app is something that on the one hand is a cool product idea, but on the other hand, I could turn this into a nice tutorial in the future and teach how to use this stuff because it's new technology. It's really interesting. So even if the app itself doesn't make any money, it's still useful for me because I can turn it into content. So I always try to kill two birds with one stone in this regard.
One thing that this would be good for is psychologists or therapists as a tool for their clients. Like, you know what I mean? Where, psychologists or therapists will ask you to journal and use this as a way of self-reflection to some degree. You know what I mean? And even if the AI is wrong, it's a good way, do you disagree with the summary in a way? And then you can, it initiates, it's sort of like people have a tendency to want to distance themselves from themselves. So this is a way to reintroduce yourself to yourself from a psychological perspective, and then, if you disagree, then you go figure it out and they talk to the therapist about it or whatever. But it's like another entry point into being self-actualized. That's a little bit, if you like playing that way, fine. Like it's fun to play with, but it's also, it's also efficient, right? It's like, okay. And then they can actually even the therapist can actually have a standard form that they say you should ask about yourself for the week. You know what I mean? And, if the AI can answers all these questions in a particular way, and then that, or not, or, there's all kinds of things you can do with it. But I think that there's a whole, there's definitely a sort of a therapist angle going on in the world right now. And, I think that market would love the idea. Well, I mean, it depends on how they treat it. Who knows, right? But I think that whole market will eat this up. Really, really, really. If you can get the right person behind it, that whole market will eat it out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people actually also really enjoy talking to AI. This is why all these AI girlfriend apps and so on are really popular right now. I actually heard somewhere that there were people who actually killed themselves because the AI girlfriend got an update and their personality changed, and they actually committed suicide. Maybe it's a bullshit story, and
it doesn't sound true, but it also sounds exactly like what would happen.
And I don't remember where I heard it from, but I thought it was a credible source. I heard it in some podcast. Yeah.
I mean, the number one creator on I don't know if this is true, but the number one creator on these on pay to experience sites, the most popular one is actually a digital model.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
That's not surprising, she never ages. But let's go back to tech a little bit. So I think this would be my last question. So I've been playing with Next.js and have had my own perspective on it. Could you tell me what you think about it and this sort of new model of this hybrid server-side, client-side model for building web applications, and how you think that this abstraction, where do you think this abstraction is going to be going, and how valuable do you think it's been?
Yeah, Next.js seems to be all about getting stuff to work very quickly. That's what I like about it so much, because I'm doing this indie hacking, and adding features quickly without a lot of hassle and complications is really nice for me. I don't know how it is when you work in a big company on large projects, then it's usually not that easy. But I really like the latest developments in Next.js. And server components just make it, with a server component, I just fetch data and I don't have to make a request to a server. I can just access the database directly in my component, and server actions are basically the counterpart for post requests. So now, even if I want to send something to my server, I don't have to set up a server endpoint. I can just call a function and that's it. And it feels so intuitive and fast. I really like it. And the caching part is something that trips a lot of people up, because this can be a bit complicated, how the data is cached and what is now actually rendered on the server and on the client. But I found for my projects, I was able to figure everything out. And I think I used the server rendered parts and the client rendered parts pretty intelligently and in a way that it's useful. And I really like it so far. But again, I'm working only on my own projects, which are fairly small. I don't know how it is when you work on a very large project, then it might not be so much roses and sunshine. But I really enjoy it. And I like the new app router more than the old pages directory in Next.js. So I do like the changes they have done.
Well, you never know. Maybe one of your projects won't be such a small project in the future. So maybe you'll get to experience the pain of the growing pains of Next.js if you're lucky.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope I do.
Thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. Where can people... Thank you for saying that. Where can people find you? If they want to find you, I know you have a lot of courses and I know you have a YouTube channel. So just tell them where they can find you and find all the things you've made so far.
Yeah, the best entry point is probably my YouTube channel, which is called Coding in Flow. So this is 3 words, Coding in Flow. That's the name I came up with when I started the channel, because I thought coding, I read this book about the flow state. Do you know the flow state?
Yeah.
Which is when you are focused on something so much and you enjoy it and time just flies by. And I was really much into this positive psychology stuff around this time when I started hating poker, because I wanted to find more fun and happiness, so I was reading these books. And I thought coding is the perfect flow activity, because you can focus on it so much and you can enjoy it and time just flies by. This is why I came up with Coding in Flow. And the funny coincidence is that Flow, F-L-O-W, are also my initials, because my name is Florian Walter. So that's a cool coincidence. But yeah, Coding in Flow YouTube channel, and from there you usually find all the rest, or codinginflow.com, which is the corresponding website with all the links on there. But yeah, if people are interested in web dev stuff and React and Next.js, then the YouTube channel would be a nice way to go.
Got it. What about your projects? Are they all live?
Yeah, so one is tutap.io, but it's not really so useful to open this website and use it in this way. I get my traffic to the website through programmatic SEO pages. So I have different search result pages specifically set up for people to find them over Google. So people Google for best Flutter tutorials and they get to a Tutap page that has a list of these Flutter tutorials. But going to Tutap directly to the front page and using it like this is not that useful. So it's probably not that interesting for people to check this out unless they just want to see what's going on there. And yeah, then I built. Yeah, I mean, some people use it like that.
Some people, yeah.
And the other one I'm building right now is smartdiary.co. Again, I can't afford the com domain yet, so it's .co.
Well, whoever's listening, if you guys can sign up as much as you can, so that Florian can afford the com domain. He's tired of the .co.
But I mean, it's also free. Right now, there isn't even any paid features in there. But in the future, I want to add some additional features. Yeah.
That explains a lot.
It's true.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.